Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg. Today I want to talk about the Pelikan Pura pens. Um, they're a kind of departure from Pelikan's most famous pens. They are Souverain line and they're piston filling pens. This is a pen that uses cartridges or converter, and it also has a kind of modern look to it, which is different to the much more traditional pens that Pelikan is known for. Um, this is sort of the classic Pelikan pen. Um, uh, it is a piston filler. It comes in all different sizes. This is the M800. This is the M600. This is the 200 line of this pen, and you can see that it has very similar characteristics, even when it just gets smaller or bigger. But it has this famous clip that looks like a pelican's beak, and it has a similar cap to it and the logo on the top. And these are wonderful pens. The M800 pen, I actually feel is my favorite pen. If I had to choose one of all my fountain pens, it would be the M800. It has a fantastic nib. It writes beautifully. It is absolutely reliable. I have two of them. One is from 1997, and it's just terrific, right? But the success of Pelikan in a way has been their difficulty, because I think they've had a hard time coming up with other designs that are as iconic and as successful. If you look at their competitors like Lamy, Lamy has the Lamy 2000, but it also has the Safari, and it has a lot of other pens that people enjoy. Mont Blanc, of course, has the 149, but then they have all these very, very expensive pens named after famous artists, musicians, and they do a fantastic job of having a kind of variety of different pens. The one thing they don't go after is um, the cheap market, the everyday person. Their pens are very, very expensive and sell at a premium. Pelikan sort of wants to have both. They have premium pens, and they also have inexpensive pens. But I don't think they've been successful. They've tried over the years, and when I say successful, I suppose these pens sell, but they don't have the kind of prestige or excitement that people feel. I mean, so here, this is this is from the 60s and the 70s. This is called the Happy Pen or the Pelicano pen, different versions of this. And you can see that this is very similar to the kind of pen that a Parker 51. I think this is called the Go, and it has a kind of mod look to it. I did a whole review about the level pens, and how I thought those are very bizarre, but they seem to be really an attempt to do something different and to seem on the cutting edge. I think of all of these different attempts, the Pura is successful at really going in a different direction, while still, if you can see the clip, still sort of looks like a Pelikan pen. So it's a kind of interesting compromise between modern, contemporary looking, and still sort of staying true in some ways to the history of the pen company. The one, I suppose, in this sense, the one thing that's most different about this pen, besides its materials, it's steel. It doesn't have the ink window, is that it's a converter filler, a cartridge filler. And also it has a nib that is much more similar to a kind of Lamy standard nib than the kinds of nibs that go on the um, Souverain line or their traditional line of pens. One of the things you notice about the pen when you hold it is it's quite substantial feeling. It has a kind of weightiness to it. It's aluminum and steel. It has a steel nib. So it feels like quite substantial. The other thing in terms of Pelikan's pens is that um, this is the M200, and you can see that it is, which is a pretty small pen, right? And you can see that this is much bigger. It's actually a little bit bigger than the Metropolitan, to give you a size, or about the same size, I guess, as the Metropolitan. And to look at it in terms of the lineup at Pelikan, their traditional pens, there you have it with the M800, so it's about the same size, more narrow. Subtle thing with the design. So in the silver version, you see that there's this brushed silver and then it's chrome here. So that's kind of subtle. In the black, it's less subtle. You can see that it's got this kind of enamel finish and then this silver band here, or the chrome band here. The logo has been dramatically simplified. It's hard to see that, right? It has this sort of almost like a bullet end to it, to the end cap. And as I say, it uses a converter. It does post, but you have to sort of really push it down, and then it posts very securely. And it clicks too on the top, so you don't have to screw it, so you can write very quickly. That's another advantage to the pen. And it's nice. It's a nice streamlined pen. I think it's interesting the way they still sort of created a clip that looks like a pelican beak. It doesn't have the eyes, but it still has these sort of lines, and I suppose it could be sort of a duck beak also. I don't know. But anyway, that's kind of nice in the tradition. But in other ways, it's breaking with the tradition. It doesn't have, one thing that's missing from it is it doesn't have a window so you can see the ink level the way that you do. You're able to see in the Pelikan version, the traditional version, the whole body of the pen is translucent, so you can see. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see the ink level if you hold it up to the light. That's not something that you get with, and this is also a much lighter pen, the M800. Even the M1000 feels lighter than this pen does. When you get the pen, it doesn't actually come with a converter. At least mine did not come with a converter. But it will work with a converter. They really market it as a cartridge pen. But I noticed that even though Pelikan pens take international cartridges, that most of my international Schmidt cartridge converters didn't fit in it. But when I got a Pelikan converter, it did fit. So that's something to keep in mind with this in terms of using it with a converter. This now has a converter in it. And so that's interesting that they really want you to use their cartridges, I think, in the pen. And maybe other people have had different experience with it. I think in some ways what Pelikan was thinking of is the Lamy Studio. There's a kind of similarity, I think, and similar in audience and even around in price. Actually, the Pura is a little more expensive than the Studio, but it depends on the finish that you get it in. And also you can get the Studio in a 14K with a 14K nib, and the Pura doesn't come with a 14K nib as far as I know. You can only get it with a steel nib. It tends to run around $100 or $120, depends on where you get it. I got both of mine on eBay for much less than that. But they're reissuing it in different colors, and I've seen those on Amazon as much as $150. So it's not a cheap pen. It's not an inexpensive pen, and the question is, do you feel that for a steel pen is this a good value? I would say that it feels much more substantial and heavy than the M200 or 205 in that sense. In terms of design, in terms of just the way they look, I think the Lamy pen is much more beautiful. I think there's something kind of a little fussy about this design of Pelikan. It's a little over designed, and the off-centered quality of the way they did the the different between the brush and the chrome, or the black and the chrome, or and the red or the blue seems, I don't know, it doesn't seem quite as elegant as I would like, or has, you know, it just doesn't appeal to me as much as, let's say, how beautiful this design is. The other problem I have, and I feel this about a lot of pens, I actually feel it the same thing about the Lamy Studio, is that I find that the section is slippery, and that I'm not thrilled with sections, and that's true too for the most part with the Lamy Studio as well, and in metal pens. I wish they would do something with the section to make it less slippery. And yet, you know, I didn't mind it in terms of writing. If you read my or see my review of the Pelikan Jazz, which is a very inexpensive pen, very narrow and very slippery, I really didn't like that. This, I think, you know, writes nicely. It's a nice pen. It's a nice pen, but I don't think it's successful as a Lamy pen. Where this pen really shines is with the nib. I think it really actually is a nice writer. So this is the Pelikan Pura, and this is a medium nib, and this is Waterman, intense black. And this is Rhodia paper. The nib doesn't really have any line variation to speak of, but it is very nice and smooth and wet. There's a little bit of feedback. It's a very pleasant writer. My major complaint is that I just find the section to be a bit slippery, but it's not terrible. I mean, I definitely enjoy writing with this. I think it's particularly attractive in the silver. I like it better than the different colors, actually. It comes in a mocha, it comes in a red, it comes in a blue, and a black. And I think what they're planning to do is introduce new colors, perhaps. Anyway, it does really write very nicely. And it actually reminds me a lot of the Lamy Studio, because that also has is very slippery. But has this kind of streamlined quality to it. You can see how I think it's a very handsome pen.